Alright, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. As part of the Rankin Technical College AWD, or Application and Website Development Program, and in particular, the AWD1100 C# Programming Language Fundamental course, I'm doing a series of video presentations based on the textbook for the course, which, as you can see right here, is Murock's C# 2015. There are 26 chapters in the book, and so far I've done all of Section 1, all of Section 2, all of Section 3, all of Section 4, all of Section 5, which means that it puts me into Section 6. I have 2 chapters left: how to enhance the user interface and how to deploy an application. I had mentioned previously that in my humble opinion here, this is kind of a hodgepodge. There's a lot of stuff in here that probably doesn't fit in other chapters. So how to enhance the user interface. We have 4 applied and 1 knowledge objective. Our applied objectives: use the tab control to organize an application, use a single document interface for an application, use a multiple document interface for an application, add menus, toolbars, and help information to an application, and finally distinguish between a single document and a multiple document interface. All right. Here are programs that are single document interface examples, and here's a multiple document interface example. All right. So, as it says here, here is a startup form for a financial calculation application. So you've got a lot of stuff here, but the big thing is, other than the fact that you've got some text here and you have a logo here, is you've got a couple buttons, and each of these buttons will cause a different form to be opened. So it's a multiple document interface. All right. Now, when you do this, there are different ways that you can create a form. You can create the form, just have it be out there all the time, or you can instantiate or create a new form, as shown on this top example, as it's needed. In addition, when you're all done, now this is pretty harsh, pretty severe. This says for an exit button, if you click it, application exit. Typically, what you're going to want to put there is some kind of a message box that says, are you sure you want to close the program? Now, notice there's a difference. This closes everything. This will close just the current form. So here's a form that uses a tab control. A tab control is one of those controls on our toolbox. All right. So what you can do is, the idea here is, you could either be running this application to figure out a future value, or you can be running the application to figure out depreciation, but not both. So if you click the tab for future value, this form comes up. If you click the tab for depreciation, this form comes up. You can see they look very similar to one another as far as how they're set up, although they're definitely not identical. Code that uses the selected index property of a tab control. Well, what are we saying? Okay, if we chose 0, which is this one, show that form. Otherwise, if we chose 1, which is this one, show that form. Code that uses the selected index event. Again, if it's 0, what we're saying is we want the focus to go here. If it's a 1, we want the focus to go here. All right. Now, working with menus, menus really are for lack of better words. They're pretty doggone simple to work with. You go out and you drag a menu strip out onto the screen. All right? Then it'll allow you to put in a menu option. If you want to put in another option at the same level, you go to the right of the current option. If you want to put a submenu, you go down. That's pretty much it. Now, when you create these, they give, for some reason, they give you really big names. It's like menu strip, tool item, or something like that. Just when you name things that are in here, be consistent. The other thing to realize is just like a button, a menu responds to a click event. And oftentimes you might want, so look, notice here, that calculate and that calculate might very well respond the same way. That close and that close. That's one reason that you want to modularize your program. You don't want to put all the code for calculating in here, the code for closing in here. You want to put it in separate routines so they can be called from either one of these or either one of these. All right, some common menu item properties: the text you want on the menu, the name, okay, the checked and the enabled, those might be some that you're going to use, and shortcut keys. So what are we doing here? On click, we're telling you to take everything and set it to null, or the empty string. Again, this is not a good example in my humble opinion, because you'd be doing the same thing with the button. So this should be put in its own routine. Maybe they'll show that, I don't know. Now, it is possible for a menu thing to call a button. I would never do this. All right, why? Because if later you decide, well, I've already got the menu option here, I'm going to get rid of the button, you've got to remember to remove the code here and change it to something that works. All right. So here is a project with a parent form and two child forms. So we've got the main form, and underneath it, the depreciation and the future value form. Notice here where they're talking about the properties and methods for a parent form is MDI, MDI multiple document interface. At design time, you set this property to true to indicate that it's a parent. At runtime, you use this property to reference or retrieve a reference of a child. Notice there's an MDI parent property, which, as it says, typically for a child form, you can set this property to specify whether it's a parent or a child. It is also not beyond the realm of possibility that a form could be both a parent and a child. So if we had another form that went off of, let's just say this future value, did something special, then future value would be a child of the main form and a parent to whatever would come after it. So here is, as it says, code that creates and displays a new instance of a child form, and then code that refers to the active child form. Again, there are other ways of doing this. I don't think that I'm the person to say, there are other ways of doing it that are better than this, or there are other ways of doing it, but this is better. You have to get exposed to a lot of things and see what makes the most sense to you. Tool strip. You can create your own tool strip. You've got control over what gets put on it. As it says, here are the standard items. Here are just a couple customs. The items collection editor dialog box for a tool strip. So you can put in there what you want to put in. You can decide, as an example here, you want to view or hide a toolbar, or have multiple toolbars, and which one will show or which ones will show. Going along with that, as they show right here, this is code that shows or hides a toolbar depending on what you've selected in a menu. Tooltips are nice for two different reasons. One is if you've got someone who's a naive user, they can put their mouse over the field and figure out. In this case, it says enter the amount it costs to acquire the asset. Well, that's actually a little bit redundant, but let's suppose that amount had to be positive and it had to be less than or equal to $100,000. You could put that in there. It's also nice when you do this. It's nice for people who are, if you've got a browser for the blind. All right, they have tooltips. So a tooltip, as mentioned there, is a brief description of a control that's displayed automatically when you place the mouse pointer over a set control. To create these, you add a tooltip control to the form. This control makes a property called tooltip available, makes it available basically that anybody can use it. All right. Now, what I have done in the past, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with what the author shows here, not a bit. But I've come through here and I've added another thing in here called help, where I bring up a dialog box that would have this information. I can have it be as long as I want. All right. Context-sensitive help. You can add a help provider to a form. And it says to display a text string when the user presses the F1 key, enter the text help string on help provider 1. You may or may not be aware of this, but when you are working inside of Visual Studio, and let's say that I was working and I was making my first form, and I had no idea how to use a button. I can click on a button, or if there's one on the form, or I can add one on the form, hit F1 and get information about buttons. All right. And that's pretty much it. Yep. So we've got one chapter left, and that's how to deploy an application. And I will be back with that last lecture very soon.